Hello and welcome. You are watching News 9 Live, and tonight we're discussing something that's very important concerning Indians in Australia, and that's because the consulate, the Indian consulate in the Australian city of Brisbane has been shut down after an attack by Khalistani supporters. Khalistani supporters today forced the closure of the Indian consulate in Brisbane, the attack on the Indian consulate taking place barely days after India asked Australia to rein in Khalistani separatists on its soil. They have been on the rampage, attacking Hindu temples across Australia. Now, the Indian consulate, located on Swan Road in the Taringa suburb of Brisbane, was earlier stormed by Khalistani supporters on the night of the 21st of February as well. Khalistanis attacked the Indian consulate in Brisbane in Australia's Queensland state last month as well. So clearly, this is not the first, and this will not be the last, the way things are going at this point in time. And it's extremely concerning because more than 3% of Australia's population are Indians. Indian diaspora makes up more than 3% of Australia's population. And there are many in India who are harboring hopes of a better life and a better job and a better everything else by getting a PR in Australia. So many people think of Australia as a peaceful place to immigrate to. But not tonight, because it's not every day that the Indian consulate in a city gets shut down, and that too in a peaceful country like Australia, in a city like Brisbane, which is so cosmopolitan. So it's shocking to say the least. So let's first understand what this means for Indians watching this broadcast in India and across the world, and what does it mean for Indians living in Australia and elsewhere. I have a couple of very special guests joining us. We have Manju Seth joining us and Asif as well. I'm going to start with Manju. Manju, let me start with you with a simple question. Do you think the situation in Australia is extremely worrisome because of the simple fact that it's not every day that no matter what the attacks are, that the Indian consulate gets shut down on foreign soil?
Absolutely, it is very unusual, though it is only an honorary consulate, but still it's never shut down like this because full security is provided usually by the host government, and this kind of thing does not happen in the normal course. And we can see how they're attacking Indians, and no one is stopping them. The police are unable to stop them. That is absurd, absolutely. And I think these visuals are extremely worrisome and extremely sending a very wrong message to everyone that Indians can be attacked at will, and there's no one going to come to their attack to their rescue. And this is a worrisome message that we see in the visuals here, and the way they're attacking. And the Khalistanis, I think, have obviously got some support from somewhere. Otherwise, why would they be doing this, and why are they doing it now and in this manner? And saying Hindus, and they're equating Hindus with India, saying, everyone knows India is a multicultural, multi-religious country. And here we are seeing that they're attacking Indians there and saying, just go away from here. And they're attacking India in that, in their sort of whatever graffiti and whatever they've posted.
Right, Manju, hold the thought. Let me just take this across to Asif as well for initial comments. Asif Ramesh Daudi, foreign affairs expert, joining us on this broadcast. Talk to us, in terms of situations. Clearly, Khalistan versus India, and it's the Hindu temples that are being attacked because that's the safest way of attacking India on foreign soil. Right, I think your mic is on mute, Asif. Please, if you can just unmute your mic and then talk, if you can, so that we can hear you, Asif.
Can you hear me now?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, let me tell you that it's quite unfortunate, unusual, especially on a foreign land, when you talk about diplomatic channels and consulate or embassies. There are a few things that we need to understand. Okay, one thing is that they have their movement and they call themselves as protesters, which they are not. Anyone who does something of this sort must be called terrorist, okay? And what is happening there on a foreign land, there are a few things or agencies or governments are responsible for that as well. You cannot do anything of this sort if you look at the visuals that, you are forcing a consulate of a country, especially like India, which has its own image, its own reputation and its own even sovereignty. When you go to the Indian consulate on a foreign land, it means you are entering the Indian land there, your Indian soil, because it is governed by the Indian government completely. So when something of this sort happen, this is really, really unfortunate. And I think, well, let me explain a few more things here, that this could happen only if they get this kind of some sort of, if not support, then at least the leniency that, okay, you can go ahead and do it. Because no one can dare to get into the premises of a consulate, especially for India or any other country, and get this shut in this way. So for me, like I am really surprised. Let me give you one example. When there was Nupur Sharma's case, and all the other countries here in the Gulf region, they had lots of reactions and serious reactions. But in Kuwait, you might have noticed that how many Indians were sent back to their countries only because of doing the protest, because it is against the local laws. So there is something which we should understand, that you cannot do these kinds of hooliganism when you are on a foreign land or anywhere, even in your own country. But this is happening here and nothing serious it's been taken so far. It is a bigger concern, especially when the Prime Minister of Australia visited India and he assured that there won't be, severe action or, some policies will be made that these things don't increase there in that country. But the thing is that it is rather getting worse, and it is getting taking the further heights, which is not safe, which is not good for the Indians living in Australia in general, and overall image of India in particular, Anand.
Right. Asif Ramesh Dawoodi there giving us a perspective. Let me quickly take this across to Manju Shet. Manju, the reason why I'm asking this is that there have been prime ministerial level talks on this matter days ago. This has been happening since the beginning of this year, beginning of January onwards. We've seen attacks on temples and Indians living in Australia back to back, and the situation is spiraled out of control to the point where in the month of March, we are witnessing the shutdown of the Brisbane Consulate. Talk to us after the prime ministerial level talks. Have there been any changes in the way things have operated in Australia? Because clearly the Khalistani separatists seem to be as Asif was talking about, seem to be given some kind of tacit support.
They seem to be having a free hand. It's very strange that these visuals that you are showing us unless there is some leniency, as mentioned by Mr. Ramesh also, it is impossible for anyone, even if they are citizens of Australia or if they are Indian origin or whatever they want to call themselves, Khalistanis or Khalistani supporters, whatever their status in that country, it is absolutely not acceptable that they attack the consulate like this and put the Khalistani flag on that and on that building, and only afterwards they are sort of removed from there. But it is amazing that even after Prime Minister Albanese's assurance to our Prime Minister during his recent visit, this kind of hooliganism, terror, whatever you want to call it, incident has taken place. It is extremely unfortunate, and I think the Australian government needs to send a message down to all its citizens, whatever origin they are and whatever their agenda is, that this is unacceptable. So they have to absolutely find out who's responsible for this and put them behind bars if necessary. It is not acceptable at all.
Right. Yeah. Manju Sheth, stay with us. The consulate, incidentally had to be shut down because Khalistani extremists blocked the entrance to the consulate. Queensland police said that the entire gathering of the Khalistanis over there, whatever they were doing, protesting, it was completely unauthorized. And now that you have a consulate that is shut, a resident of Queensland called Parvinder Singh was forced to reschedule his appointment at the Indian consulate due to issues with obtaining his child's overseas citizen of India card. And the matter was compounded by the presence of the protesters accommodated on a bus from the Brisbane Sikh temple. And that's according to reports from Australia Today. Now, when a consulate shuts, that's what happens. A lot of day-to-day work that's crucial for Indians on foreign soil gets completely stalled. Manju, that's a catastrophic situation for anybody looking for emergency help, last minute help. So many tourists lose their passports and documents, and they need the help of the consulate. Anything can happen, but then because of all of this, the Indian consulate remains out of reach.
Absolutely, this is unacceptable, and as mentioned by Mr. Ramesh, it is Indian territory per se. Even if it's an honorary consulate, it is Indian territory, and therefore they have to treat it as such. And they normally, in all countries, special security is provided to the consulates to ensure their safety and security. And so this is very strange that this has happened, and so many Indians at that time, whoever has an emergency, has been put to a great deal of trouble and tension. And as you said, there could be an emergency. Anybody would need some urgent consular help and consular access, and they couldn't access the consulate and get their grievance or their problem sorted out, resolved.
Right. Asif, I'm just coming to you. Before that, let's quickly take a look at the timeline of the events so far. In January 2023, the beginning of this year, the attack on Indians by the Khalistani groups in Melbourne, in the city of Melbourne in Australia, began. The Ministry of External Affairs of India strongly condemned the attack on the Indian community. The Ministry of External Affairs of Australia also. On the 12th of January, we had the Swaminarayan Mandir, Swaminarayan Temple in Mill Park, smeared with anti-India, anti-Hindu graffiti. That was the 12th of January. On the 15th of January, Khalistanis tried to draw support for their referendum through a car rally in Australia, and they were doing that. January 29th, several videos appeared on social media showing Indian Australians being attacked. That was the end of the month of January that we're talking about over here. And, they're attacked by Khalistanis with swords, even as they were carrying the Indian tractor, the visuals that we've been running, that we've been showing you. And in February, last month, the Kali Mata Mandir received a threatening call in Australia. And after that, the authorities had to cancel a puja event or face consequences according to that threat call that they received. And again in February 2023, the Gayatri Mandir received threatening calls as well. Extremists asked to raise, pro-Khalistani slogans. On the 21st of February, Khalistani supporters attacked the Indian consulate in Brisbane. That was the first attack on an Indian consulate after all the temples. Now we're talking about the first attack on an Indian consulate in Brisbane. Khalistan supporters attacking it on 21st of February. On the 4th of March, right after that, Lakshminarayan Temple in Brisbane again, vandalized by pro-Khalistan supporters. That was the 4th of March. A week later, on the 11th of March, the Prime Minister of Australia, Tom Albanese, said that the country will not tolerate attacks on religious buildings or religious structures. That was the 11th of March. On the 15th of March, the Honorary Consulate of India in Brisbane, on Swan Road in Brisbane, was attacked. That was the 15th of March. That's the timeline. And attacked to the point where it had to be shut down. So it has been building up from the beginning of the year, and now we have the strangest of incidents happening, and this is a shutdown of an Indian consulate. Asif, I'm going to come to you. Tell us, from the India-Australia national relationship perspective, how damaging could this be? Because the Indian government is taking note of the fact that its consulate has been shut down in Brisbane, although it's an honorary consulate as it may be. But the fact of the matter is that this will definitely have an impact on the overall India-Australia relations.
Well, that's a very good question, Anand. Let me tell you, I always talk about how we can enhance relation of India with other countries, but there are certain limits and limitations that we should understand, that there is a level of tolerance. Here what happens, the relation will definitely have some sort of, it will shake. Why? If no immediate action, at least now, is taken, as per the timeline that you have right now explained so nicely, it cannot be done. Shutting down a consulate is even for temporary period of time. These things cannot happen in overnight. It takes time, and it needs proper planning, and it needs courage. Just mere consoling this or giving some sort of assurance and having condemnation by the government is not going to help. Because if you look at the visuals, if you look what is happening there, and it gives the clear message that they are in a mood that they are going to attack. Whosoever they find, they have, that kind of intention that, okay, they have already taken the laws in their hands. So if the local government doesn't take it seriously, let me tell you, I have been living in, out of India, overseas for more than 22 years, and I have never seen these kinds of chaos, especially in the countries where I have lived. People can't dare to go to the consulate or other premises, even other countries consulate or other areas where they have some kind of, there is one thing that we should understand. When it comes to Indians living there, that is one thing. When it comes to the diplomats, Indian diplomats or diplomats from the other countries in the host country, there comes another rule. Here, we need to understand what is the diplomatic immunization. If something happens to the consulate, if something happened to the diplomats there, and at the same time, the things, the daily work that gets hampered, and there is a chaos, this completely shows something that the local government is somehow giving a kind of signal or is unable to handle the situation, which ultimately comes to your question that I will connect this to your question, that this is going to damage, this is going to hamper, this is really going to have a bigger impact on the relationship between these two countries. Let me give you an example. If something of this sort happens in India, I wish it never happens, and it will not. This is just to explain to your viewers, something of this sort happens, and we have more than 3% of Australians living in our country. Whose responsibility is it to take care of those Indians and to take care of the consulate premises? And the first responsibility is the responsibility of the Indian government. And the Indian government has very good relation with Australia. What will Australia do? Or the government of that country do? So there will be retaliation, and this can go further, and this can aggravate if proper action, at least now, started in March, in January, and now in March, and they are just keeping quiet. This is not going to help. And I tell you, even from your medium, I want to tell you, living in abroad, overseas, I think this is something which the local host country should understand. If they really want to have the proper, better and stronger relation with India, India should not be taken lightly, I tell you, all around the world. If they also want the relation should go further, they should go out of the box, and they should not just give assurances, and they should not just condemn this. They should prove something that, okay, they are taking action, and action is needed, because this proper incident and the visuals that you are showing, Anand, it's something very serious, and it is directly attacking the integrity and dignity of India, which we are not going to accept, and every Indian should understand this.
Absolutely. Now, let me, at this stage, we were talking about, in the relationship between India and Australia. This is what Prime Minister Albanese of Australia had to say while speaking to the magazine Australia Today, to the media outlet Australia Today. And he said that I gave him, as in Modi, Prime Minister Modi, the assurance that Australia is a country that respects people's faith, that we don't tolerate the sort of extreme actions and attacks that we've seen on religious buildings, be they Hindu temples, mosques, synagogues or churches. This has no place in Australia, unquote. This is the quote. India and Australia, bear in mind, are strategic partners. And during Australian Prime Minister Albanese's India visit, both the countries agreed to accelerate a broader economic partnership and boost their defense. And this was just last week. Australia and India made significant and ambitious progress in strengthening defense and security ties, and also discussed climate change issues on that visit, which also included a cricket match as well between India and Australia. Now, last year, India and Australia had signed a free trade deal called the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, the first signed by India with a developed country in a decade. Bilateral trade between India and Australia stood at $27.5 billion in the year 2021. And India says trade has the potential to double to $50 billion or more in the 5 years with the new trade pact, the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement that India has signed with Australia. It's for short called ECTA. And in the 2022 financial year, India was Australia's 9th largest trading partner. And with the hopes of doubling that trade in the next 5 years, India's exports to Australia totaled over $8 billion, nearly $8.5 billion. And imports to the country stood at $16.5 billion. That's the kind of numbers we're talking over here. Let me take this back to Manju. Manju Sheikh, talk to us. This is the kind of relationship that these two countries have. And this is the kind of situation that you don't want when you're ambitious about doubling your trade, when you're ambitious about striking the free trade deal and so much more cooperation in security, in climate change, and etc. etc. This is the kind of situation that you don't want interfering with that. But the point is, in the situation that we are in, for the sake of the protection of the Indians, there has to be something done from Australia's side. If they say when two hands come together, they clap. So there needs to be more action from Australia's side to hold up this relationship at this stage.
Absolutely, I agree with you entirely. Bilateral relations have to be mutually beneficial, and mutual respect for this is a kind of attack on sovereignty, almost, you can say, on our Indian nationals. And I think we have to be able to leverage our good relations with them and ensure that action is taken. If the Khalistani, pro-Khalistani elements are not reined in, I think it will impact our sort of improvement or in our relations and the doubling of the trade. It will impact, and India needs to send this message very clearly to them, and they need to take action at the local level as well as at the central government, Australian government, to stop this and not to have any more repetitions. Already twice it's happened, so I think a third time if it happens, it will not be acceptable to us at all, and it should not be acceptable.
Right. Asif, my question here at this stage is only one thing. Are Indians in Australia walking around with a target on their back because the attacks are not stopping, the skirmishes are not stopping? It's been 3 months. What is the level of fear, psychosis, or paranoia? Is there at all amongst Indians in Australia, or are we overthinking this at this stage?
Anand, there are two things that I would like to share my perspective and views here. One thing, it's related to the Indians living there. Another thing is the Indians who are the Indian diplomats at the same time. I repeat it. Now, earlier when they had issues and they said that they have local rules, okay, fair enough, we respect that. If you have any local rules there, you should follow that, it's fine. But how about if a consulate or the building of the Indian consulate or premises is shut and it's attacked? This is something different. This comes under the international, laws, and Manju Sethji can even explain it further later. Now, what I have to say, earlier they might not have been that worried. The Indians, okay, it's fine. There could be some protest and there are local rules and the government is just not taking that seriously. It's fine. But today what has happened, it is more serious. Why it is serious? I tell you, there must be, having fear that if they can go to this level and attack the Indian consulate where they are, the diplomats are immunized, they have a special treatment by the local host countries. If they can go to that level, what can be the situation of the common Indians? I don't want to scare them. I don't want, if they are having, watching your show, I say that it's not something that one should really, get worried. But there is something that the government should first worry. And in that case, I have to reiterate that they have to take serious and severe action. If, for example, you can't do much because of your laws to protect you should protect the religious, premises as well, whether it's temple or other religious, worship places to worship. But here, when it comes to
and definitely the consulate, not just the religious establishment, definitely the consulate for sure, because it's after all India's sovereign territory that needs to be protected. That is Australia's responsibility. And the fact that the Indian consulate in Brisbane has been shut down because of Khalistani attacks is an extremely worrying situation. And this is the second attack on the Indian consulate in Brisbane, because of which a temporary shutdown has been forced on the Indian consulate in Brisbane. Here's hoping that the consulate building opens soon so that all work can continue and another attack does not take place. At this stage, I'm going to thank the guests who have joined us on this broadcast, Manju Sheth and Asif. Thank you so much for taking your time out and sharing your thoughts and views with us. And with that, we wrap up this particular discussion here on News 9 Live. Thank you so much for watching. This is Krishna Kumar signing off.